In today's episode, we discuss diversity in the legal industry with Elaine Russell from Law Space Match. Welcome to the Law Firm Launch Podcast.
Hello to all of our podcast listeners, or if you're watching this on YouTube, the Legal Back Office podcast is called Law Firm Launch Podcast, LLP, and we love it because we are interviewing people within the legal industry that have launched their law firm or launched their startup or launched a company that supported the legal industry in a way that we think we can learn from. And that's really meaningful. And so thank you for being with us today. I'm very excited about having Elaine Russell on with me today. Elaine and I have become good friends. She was one of the people that I talked to really not long after Legal Back Office had just started. And so here we are 3 years in. I just feel like such a special place, I guess, in my heart for all the people that I met sort of early on when starting LBO. And Elaine is a lawyer. She's been running her own practice for 24 years and then had this brilliant idea to launch Law Space Match, which I will let her talk a little bit about. So she's sort of a double entrepreneur, if you will, and a very innovative thinker here within our industry. So Elaine, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jamie. It's always great to see you, talk to you, and know what's going on at Legal Back Office. I appreciate being on here. Yes, I've been in my own practice for 24 years and been practicing for over 30. So that's kind of scary almost to say. But and also took an opportunity to put a web app together for lawyers who share office space across the United States. So we just connect lawyers with empty offices, with lawyers who are looking for offices, and trying to help the profession, help small law particularly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Because rent is one of the things that I think old school law firm startup. There was sort of a build it and they will come mentality. And firms ended up sort of getting sort of in over their heads from an expense perspective. And I think what sort of transitioned over time is this idea of lawyers sharing space, sharing expense, and being able to scale in a way that's more healthy.
Exactly. I mean, my whole solo practice has been operated within other law firms. So I have shared office space with law firms in the metro Atlanta area for the whole 24 years. So yeah, it's worked for me.
Well, I'm grateful to have you on the podcast, but also specifically talking about this topic of diversity within the legal industry. We simply must do better. And I mean, most within our industry know the general statistics about, women sort of making up 50% of our industry, men making up 50% of our industry. But that number drastically shrinks whenever we talk about equity partnership and leadership within law firms. I think it's around 20%, of equity partners are women. And why is there that gap? And, I think so many of us in our industry have been inspired by Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her saying, women should be in positions where all major decisions are being made. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And so I'd love for you to maybe kick us off by telling us, like, what was a significant experience in your career that really impacted you and how you were going to grow going forward?
I think probably the biggest impact in my both career and both personally was when I was working at a large law firm, or medium large at that point. It was top heavy, of course, with one woman partner and the rest of them men. And I was associate working, 80 hours a week doing federal court, complex litigation, and was just, moving along, enjoying that, but then got a call from my previous boss who said that one of our clients wanted to hire me and go in-house counsel. And I had never met the client. So I was a little nervous because I hadn't done had much experience in that practice area, doing litigation. And I really weighed it out and thought to myself, I'm going to take this risk. I'm going to meet with this client. I'm going to, listen to my mentor, who was my previous boss, and, take this jump, because I figured I could always go back to the law firm and, transition back. But as a result, I went into that area as general counsel, and then that company was sold. And I worked with this entrepreneur and then launched my own business, my own practice, focusing on corporate transactions and being a general counsel. But back to the issue about the women, there was one female partner, like I mentioned, and she said, "Congratulations, you got hired as general counsel. That's great." And she said, "I, wish that I could leave and do something." And I was like, "What?" And it was very startling to me, but it made me think that maybe what you think you want isn't really what's in your best interest, both professionally and personally, because as a result of taking this risk and believing in myself, with the help of my previous mentor, Steve Strelzik, I feel like I got to have a little control over my life and creating my own practice and picking my clients, my practice area that I enjoy. But I will never forget that conversation. And I actually said, "Jamie, well, maybe you can leave." And she's like, "I really want to be an FBI agent." So it was really interesting. But, as I watched that firm, as they transitioned and broke up, they eventually brought more women into the equity partner track. So I think that was over 20 years ago. So we are seeing some changes with women moving into equity positions. But I also read in Wall Street probably 3 months ago that some of these women in law firms are being crunched with COVID, with family obligations, practice pressures, billing requirements. Many of these female attorneys in large law firms are leaving and opening their own shingle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think the choice is great.
Well, you didn't even probably realize you were doing this, but you were like segueing right into my next question, which was, if you were going to talk about like starting up your own, company, right? Because you've started up two now, right? You've got your law firm and you've got Law Space Match. And I think a lot of our listeners, Law Firm Launch podcast are listening to this, looking for ideas about, I'm going to ask you sort of the two questions. The first one was like, what ultimately inspired you to start your own business, and how did you sort of get the guts, right, to actually do it? Where did that where did that confidence come from, and how can you encourage other people if they've been thinking about it, right? So that's more like the ethereal. And then I'd love for you to actually touch on too, like, what are some of the things that were your go-to resources that actually helped you get off the ground and successful sort of when you were starting?
Okay. And we're talking about my law practice, right? Or both?
Oh, both, really? Or maybe they're different and you can tackle them one at a time.
Okay. They are different. I think that it was the confidence that I had to have to take the risk to move from a practice area of litigation to this general counsel corporate work. I had to believe in myself, Jamie, because if not, I would have been, not sufficient in this new general counsel position. Gaining that confidence and working with entrepreneurs and CFOs and, operating folks in that general counsel position, after we sold, I just went to that client and said, "Hey, will you be my client? I want to start my own law firm." And of course he said yes. And so he was my anchor client to basically begin my own practice. And I ended up helping his family, and he did other deals. Most entrepreneurs don't stop, as you know. They start something, they sell it, they start again. So I feel that it was really just gaining my confidence and knowing that I could do something and taking a risk. Lawyers have got to take a risk and to be happy and joyful in their practice or whatever they're doing. As for Law Space Match, I realized that in having my own practice 4 years, I lowered my overhead by sharing office space within existing firms. And I thought, if I'm doing this and other solo practitioners are doing this, they're down the hall in another office, why not create an app across the United States that would connect people. So my inspiration was really to help other lawyers like myself who were out sharing space or had, like in this office where I am sharing space, they have a whole office that's filled with files that they're trying to reduce and scan, but it could be sent to another lawyer. So they're working on that.
Yeah.
So this exists. People were sharing space across the United States and doing it. So I was trying to help create a connection. But again, I think I got the bug to do my own thing, and I don't mind taking risk as long as it's, somewhat calculated. And sometimes lawyers are more conservative.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. When we're getting ready to take risks, it's as much about data and facts as it is about gut and confidence.
Got it.
Right? And a lot of times entrepreneurs typically veer on either direction, right? It's like either I'm too in the numbers and it's analysis by paralysis and I never do anything. I just never make the leap, or I talk about it for a decade. It's like, you've been talking about this for 10 years. Are you going to do it or not? Right?
You got to do it. You got to roll the dice.
Or I say all the time, people on the podcast that listen regularly have already heard me say this, that a lot of times lawyers are running away from something, not to something, when they start up their own firm. And it's a gut feeling. It's an emotion that they're feeling without really even looking at do I even have the qualities of an entrepreneur? Much of our industry, they're all business owners and solo practitioners and small firms. And that assessing, how many partners have launched a firm together to ultimately disband because they never had a conversation about goals or future and what we want to actually build. They were just like, I don't like what I'm at now, so let's go do something together, but not actually talk about what we want to do together.
Oh, you're right on it. Even from my clients, I hear, when they're coming together to form a business or, bring in another partner in the LLC, nobody wants to talk about the exit strategies or what ifs. They're like, oh, we're just going to go make $1 million. And I'm like, no, that's why I'm here to think these through. And we come together with each partner, with each stakeholder to determine what's important to them. How can we facilitate, exit strategies, options? And everybody always says, as oh, it's going to be fine. We get along great. Well, it sometimes doesn't happen like that when your partner gets divorced or they have life changes. Again, you have to think these things through. And that's what I love doing in my practice, because helping people think this through, it's very easy for me. I'm always challenged by what's going on with the web app, because it's a new tech world for me. But one of the things you talked about was what resources I go to. And what was so valuable for me over my growth, a lot of my growing professional years, was connecting one-on-one with other lawyers. Everything from having lunch, Jamie, with another lawyer in another practice area to, going to, solo practitioner meetings and, those types of things. I felt like I got a lot of benefit. I even got clients out of those types of connections.
Yeah.
And I missed that during the whole COVID pandemic thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's been great. And then the tech world, I just try to constantly read. That's where it's hard to reach what's going on in the techie world. I try to read as much as I can about what is happening, everything from security down to, UX on the website.
Sure.
But and then there are several applications I use. I couldn't live without Dropbox.
Oh, yeah.
Asana and QuickBooks and LastPass.
I like that you got specific. QuickBooks, Dropbox, QuickBooks, Asana.
Asana and what I use is LastPass. It's used to kind of house all your passwords.
Yeah.
We know what kind of dilemma you can be when you constantly have to change your password. So those 4 things have helped my team and stay on track and monitor our tasks and house all our data in the cloud. So that's been real specific.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned those specific cloud-based platforms, because I do think that is one thing that has differentiated successful, not just law firms, but startups in general pre-pandemic that were not in the cloud and had really been pushing back on the cloud, then saw themselves have to pivot very quickly, versus those that already have these in place. It was just sort of normal, like business as usual. We just don't go into the office, right?
Right. And what you see, or what I have seen, is that lawyers are slow to adopt technology. And that's why we made our website, Law Space Match, very simple. It's like list a law space, search for a law space, just the basics. But I am seeing now that lawyers are getting more educated, because there's more companies targeting lawyers about tech and learning about tech.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are great. Just for our listeners, QuickBooks, are you using QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop?
I use the desktop just because that's where we started, and there were some glitches, I think, in some of the versions online. So we were just, we back up to Dropbox. So we take what we have and still put it in the cloud.
Sure. I do. So for those of you listening, QuickBooks Desktop, it was pushed pretty heavily by CPAs and accountants years ago because QBO, QuickBooks Online, was glitchy. Today, I can tell you, it's very cumbersome to think about making a switch. So I really encourage, new business owners and new law firms to actually start up on QuickBooks Online. It's far less glitchy than it used to be. And what it does is it kind of gives you the glimpse into your financials, even just from your phone, which you can't really do in desktop. And it's better to start out in QBO today than have to try to transition at some point. But it helps improve the competency of the law firm owner as a true business person and business owner, being able to watch their cash flow on a pretty regular basis.
I think that's a great idea, Jamie, because if you start online, then you won't have to worry about the transition. And new lawyers, there's lots of tools out there. I think the thing a new lawyer or a lawyer starting their own practice needs to think about is not getting overwhelmed with the number of software programs they can use. Just pick a couple that work and that you can learn.
Yep.
So, and then make them work in your practice and get your team involved. And what we're seeing through Law Space Match is lawyers, small law, which you may know, Jamie, represent 50% of active practitioners in the US are what we call small law, which is solo practitioners and lawyers with 10 lawyers and under. That's 50% of licensed attorneys. They are finding that they either want a smaller footprint in a physical office, or either they're allowing their to do a hybrid of coming into the office a couple of days and still having that remote access. Mm-hmm. So now, online platforms are very important.
I'm glad that you mentioned Asana too. That's a project management software, just for those listening. And there are a number of really great ones out there. Asana is awesome. It's one of the better known brands. Basecamp is another one. Trello is another one. And it's just a way to keep a bead on tasks and projects going on within your firm. But from, this little bad boy right here, like I call this, like, this is like my life support. And if you don't take me off life support, or else bad things happen, right?
It is life support.
It's life support. And you're gonna laugh, like whenever I have to plug in my phone or my laptop, my kids always laugh at me because I say, "Oh, do you need to breathe?" like you're under the water scuba diving and you need to breathe. It
needs absolute care, because nothing can happen to it. Yeah, and it's awesome because my team they're so happy with Asana because it actually will send email notifications and they could see it on their phone. Yep. New task has been assigned, or there's been progress in this task. I wish I had been using Asana earlier on, but it's been helpful.
That's That's great to hear. Well, I'd love to sort of end on this like last question, and it might be hard for you to pick, one or two, but I'm really just for those listening that have either just started their firm or are thinking about starting a firm, from your perspective, having done this for so long, what are your best, like your one piece or your two pieces of advice to people that are in this situation about starting up their own firm?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would give to a neophyte lawyer or a lawyer challenging themselves to go out on their own is pick a practice area that you enjoy. Words, you don't want to become an expert in a practice area that is not going to make you want to go to the office in the morning. It's going to tire you out. It's great advice. Actually, I had a colleague who became an expert in being a real estate closing attorney. And he had done that for 20 years. And that's all he knew. He was pigeonholed in a niche. And he never really loved it. So pick something that you enjoy. Even if like myself, it's a whole new practice area. Trust yourself, you can learn it, you can excel. Pick something you're going to enjoy doing. That's the biggest thing. And then the second thing, which worked for me, was, start your own practice within another law firm where you can share space and perhaps get referrals, maybe get some education, some guidance from more seasoned attorneys that might be down the hall. Just get to observe other lawyers and have camaraderie. I think that dovetails into probably the third thing, which would be just keep your overhead low. And, your firm does that by taking away a lot of the stress, because if you're stressed out trying to do everything, then you aren't efficient.
Yeah, that's great. I heard a statistic recently that was most women-owned businesses in general are closed within 3 years.
Wow.
And it was such a startling statistic for me. And so to think about, you running your firm for 24 years, starting up Lost Space Match, now running them both for a significant period of time, it's incredible to me. I think, your advice is really solid. And I heard several things that you said that I just want to recap for everyone that I think are important, key points here. Like if you've listened to this whole time and you've been distracted because you've been on life support while or watching, you said at the beginning, finding a mentor, I think is really critical, even if they don't find you. I've heard that from people before. Well, I just don't have a mentor. Well, have you asked anyone to be your mentor? I got to that point where I felt like in my career, at a young age, my career sort of was this really fast upward trajectory. And so other women my age were in much different roles than I was in. And so I really had to seek out, women that were in roles that I was in to sort of give me some advice that have been there, before me. I also heard you say, don't be afraid to take a calculated risk. And that calculated word, we can't underestimate. I think it's important when taking risks, but certainly don't be afraid to take it. And then you've said several times, those one-on-one connections with other lawyers and how powerful and helpful those were for you. And then constantly reading, not setting it and forgetting it, right? We're not a turkey roaster here, right?
Right.
A learning process. And when we embrace that lifelong learning perspective, our businesses are bound to succeed and us grow as humans and professionals.
Yeah. And I think it's because if you pick a practice area that you love, you will want to learn more about it. You will want to connect with people who are in your niche. And like I said, you never know. I had a one-on-one with a colleague and they referred me to this client, and I love this client and they're my biggest client. Mm-hmm. And it was all because having a lunch.
Yep.
Like you said, four things that lawyers can just, you don't have to do 1,000 things. Just focus on 4 major things and try to be happy.
No, I love that you said that because it really affects your hustle, your engagement, your motivation. And I always talk to my clients about ROI, right? Return on investment is not always dollars. It's return on investment and how you measure it in terms of joy too. Does it bring you money, or does it bring you joy, or does it bring you both? Because we can end up putting so much time into something that brings us a lot of money, but when it brings us zero joy, we're that unhappy partner sitting at the top wishing we'd done something different. When we do something, when we spend our time on things that only bring us joy and no money, well, then we lose our business.
Yes. Then and you're not happy in any areas of your life.
Exactly.
And even though I juggle a million things, you want to be happy. That's why you've got great introspection, and just I always love talking to you because you really have a laser eye on what to focus on. And it's been great always connecting with you when we have had that opportunity.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I love what you're doing at Law Space Match. For our listeners, anyone who's watching on YouTube, go check out the website. Check out the app. It's a really cool thing. And what Elaine's trying to do here, connecting. And that's the sort of consistent thread here, which I love, is, connection, right? Connecting people with people. We need people. We are more successful when we have others in our lives that are helping us from a number of perspectives. And that's really what I've taken out as sort of the high level theme of this whole podcast today. And I appreciate you so much taking your time to share with us.
Sure.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you for listening. And Elaine, thank you for your time.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to hit subscribe or go to legalbackoffice.com for more info.